Now I am more honored than I've been in a long time in memory. Oh, there he is. Ladies and gentlemen, President Donald J. Trump. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So, I've been thinking this for the past 8 years, and I've thought it more frequently this year. What motivates you to keep going?
Who the hell knows? I don't know. I just want to be with people like this. There's so much love in this room. So much love, right? Isn't it amazing? No, it's pretty easy. I could have a lot of I have a lot of alternatives. I could be in a beautiful beach with the waves hitting me in the face and all that boring stuff. And I've been there, and you get very bored pretty easily. I have one thing in mind. It's called Make America Great Again. That's all I think about.
Amen. But was there ever a moment, I mean, I don't want to go through the litany, but I was thinking about it today, because every person in this room has followed this so carefully. But if you make a list of all the attacks, some of which are just mind-boggling in their viciousness and unfairness, culminating with being shot, was there ever a moment where you just thought, come on, this is too much?
You like not to think about that, honestly, and there are moments when you don't feel so good about things, but you try not to do that. You try not to, I always like to look forward. I don't like to look so much in the present. I don't like to look in the past so much, other than you have to learn from the past. It's history, you have to learn, otherwise you're a very foolish person. But I like to look forward. I like to think of the positive. I think you have to have a sort of the power of positive thinking in a way. And I don't know, it's just a mission that I'm on. I felt we did great in the first election, 2016. We did much better in the second election. Bad things happened, bad things happened. And had I not done well in the second, I would have said, all right, that's it, because, you wouldn't have done well. But I knew how well we did. And now, she said, you're right about that. But, no, but if I didn't do, we got millions and millions more votes in the second election, which rarely happens to a president. Usually they get less. Almost all the time they get less. Obama got less. Barack Hussein Obama, he got a lot less. And had we not done well, but I knew how well we did, and I said, well, let's see how they do. And I waited around for a year, and I looked at these people, and Biden was grossly incompetent. I saw that. His vice president wasn't even a discussion. She came in last. She was the first one to get out of the Democrat primary. She was I guess number 22. I think there were 22 people, and she was the last. She was the last or first out, if you want to look at it that way. She never got to Iowa. But I was watching, and if they could do well, I would have been very happy. Actually, I would have been very satisfied. But they were grossly incompetent. And when I watched what they were doing and how they were destroying this country at the border, I mean, millions and millions of people. I'm sure we have some in here tonight with us, you know, murderers and drug dealers, prisoners. You know, they have prisons from all over the world are being emptied out into our country, all over the world, the Congo and Africa, not just South America, you know this. They're opening up their prisons and they're bringing them into our country. Anyway, so I watched other things too. I mean, Afghanistan, you take a look at Afghanistan, what happened with Afghanistan, how bad that was. I wanted to get out, we were getting out. We were going to keep Bagram, but we were getting out with dignity and strength. We were strong. And the way they got out, they took the soldiers out first. No, you take the soldiers out last. Anybody would know that. And you watched all of the things that happened. And I said, we're going to do this thing. We're going to do it again. And we're doing well. I mean, now we're going to know in 4 days. But we're doing very well. I think we're leading by a lot. And if we can keep that cheating down, because they're a bunch of cheats, if we can keep that cheating down, we're going to have a tremendous victory. I think it'll go down as one of the greatest victories of all time. So we're going to have an exciting time. We're going to have an exciting time.
So you were in New Mexico the other day. New Mexico's considered a pretty blue state. What were you doing there?
Well, they're also a border state. They have people pouring in by the tens of thousands, and they're being decimated. They're being hurt very badly. They also have a pretty rotten economy for a lot of reasons, but what they really have is tremendous inflation. But beyond that, because I happen to think that the border is the single biggest issue. I think the border is a bigger issue than inflation. Inflation is destroying, and it's a country buster. You know, inflation, it's broken up many countries, including Germany from many years ago. You look at where there was this was the biggest inflation and the worst inflation we've ever had. They say in 48 years, they don't include a lot of things. It was the worst inflation we've ever had. Inflation is a country buster. So I'm not trying to minimize that, but I think the biggest problem and the worst thing that's happened to this country is allowing millions of people in here that are criminal people. Look, when you empty out your prisons and you put them into the United States, a lot of bad things happen, and they're coming in totally unvetted, totally unchecked. They're pouring in. Venezuela has allowed thousands and thousands of the roughest prisoners in the world to come in. You know, their crime rate is way down. I think like 70%, 72%. They've taken from Caracas and the cities in Venezuela where they have the problem. They've taken the street gangs and they've delivered them into the United States. Thank you very much. They've taken their criminals. They've taken their drug dealers and drug lords. They've taken them out of Caracas and they brought them into the United States. And it is a disgrace. And we are going to have to do a very large deportation because you can't live like that. It cannot be sustained, Tucker. It cannot be sustained. I think you know that better than anybody.
So I do know, I think it's the gravest crime ever committed against the United States, ever, by any country. Our leaders committed it against us. But it does raise the question of motive. It hasn't helped the labor market any. It hasn't helped Americans at all. You've heard a Democratic senator stood up and said the United States military should take these people. We should give them guns. New York City has given them guns in the police department. You wonder, what is going on here?
So it's the hardest thing. You know, in business, and you like to go and where you started from, you sort of like to understand where the other side's coming from. So here you're looking at something. Why do they want men in women's sports? And, you know, I've been doing this now. I used to say, I was very proud to say I wasn't a politician, but I guess after a while you're sort of a politician.
I think you qualify, yeah.
And, you know, so, I hate to say it, but you like to know where the other side's coming from. And I'll say, why do they want to have men, and they're so emphatic about it, men playing in women's sports. You see what's happening in volleyball, what's happening in swimming, what's happening in weightlifting. How about weightlifting, where records that stood for 18 years, are being broken like by hundreds of pounds. The whole thing is crazy. Then you say, why do they want to have transition? I call them transition operations by the thousands. If you just say, well, I'm thinking about it, they throw you into an operating table. And you say, why do they want to have that? Who wants that? Who wants to have open borders, they're all the same thing. They don't make any sense. We're the party of common sense, right? Because I think we're really the party of common sense. And there can only be a couple of reasons. Number one, they're stupid. Well, they're not stupid because you can't be stupid. No, but you can't be stupid and be that good at cheating on elections, okay? Because they're great at that. So they could be stupid. They could also hate our country. They could hate our country. They may hate our country. They may not even know it. A lot of people don't know it, and the other thing is they want to cheat on elections by signing these people up. And they are trying to sign people up. They're trying to sign people up that don't even know what country they're in, okay? So that's the other thing. So it's one of those three things. Nobody really knows. But you'd say, okay, so I've been doing this for a while. I've never had I've had people come up and say, gee, it would be great if you could get the taxes down. Gee, it would be great if you could do this. It would be hundreds of things. Nobody's ever come up to me and said, it's really important to me that we allow men to play in women's sports. Nobody. Nobody. And yet, it's such a big deal. It's such a big deal.
Wait, so you think the point may be just to destroy, just to break the country?
It could be they hate our country. They may hate our country. And we deal with real scum. Like a guy like Adam Shifty Schiff. He's a sleazebag. And he's probably going to be a senator, if you can believe it. But I call him Watermelon Head. No, he's unattractive, both inside and out. But this is a really bad guy. This is a dishonest guy, not a dumb guy at all. He's got the smallest neck I've ever seen on a human being. He will never be a football player, I can tell you. But he's a smart guy, but he's just a sleazebag. There's nothing else you can... Should I give you a little example?
I hope you will. I'm really enjoying this a lot.
This gentleman happens to like my son, Don, I think, because he likes you. Now, maybe you don't, but he likes you. I have a son, Don, who's a good guy. He's a good guy. He's a wild man. A little wild. I would say he's a little wild.
In a good way.
But in a good way. He's a very good kid. And I read about, all of a sudden, he's involved with Russia. I said, but I know him so well. He's my boy. I know exactly. He knows less about Russia than the cameraman that's sitting right there who's never been. Don doesn't know anything about Russia. But one day, about, 3 years before, a whole group of people met with a Russian lawyer having to do with the Nowitzki Act or something, having to do with child adoption. Crazy. But she was a Russian. Now, everybody in Congress knew this woman. But anyway, they go after him. Now, think of this. Russia was a major hoax, okay? It's now been adjudged to be a total major hoax. We had the Mueller Commission. We had everybody. It was a hoax. It was made up to justify why Hillary Clinton lost the election when she wasn't supposed to lose. It was a totally... And it was made up by Schiff and Hillary and some other just total sleazeballs. And what happened is the fake news media, which is back there, you do know that. They're always around someplace. But what happened is the fake news media, what they said is it started with a simple move. How did you lose the election? It was Russia. And I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, I won this election. What the hell did Russia have to do with it? And then it went, and it was only supposed to be a one-day deal by the Democrats. In other words, it was gonna, but the press picked it up and they liked it. They like, ooh, Russia, that sounds good. You covered it better than, you were funny. He'd go, Russia, Russia, Russia. He'd go crazy. But it drove you crazy, didn't it? Because you knew
Well,
it was such
so
a hoax.
insane, and all these people I knew believed it. It was
such a hoax. They actually tried starting it up about 2 months ago. Did you see? It flopped. This time, the press just couldn't get away with it. I'll tell you about our lawsuit having to do with the Pulitzer. You know, we brought a lawsuit against, because they said, the New York Times, Washington Post, they got the Pulitzer Prize for accurate and beautiful reporting on the Russia hoax, you know, the whole thing. And I sued them, and it's doing very well, by the way. I want the reporters to give back their awards because they were wrong. There were plenty of guys that were right, like you and Sean, and there were plenty of guys that were right. But so I said, but here's the thing. So with Shifty Shift, see, that's the weave. See, we start. You know about the weave, right? Start. As long as you come back to the right location. So what happens? You understand that?
Yeah.
Somebody said, does he ramble? I said, I don't ramble. I do the weave. I covered many, many subjects. And you always come back to the right. That's genius. There's a difference between rambling and genius. Okay. So now getting back to the point. So I have a son, Don, a good guy, knows nothing about Russia, that has zero. And they went through millions of phone calls. There wasn't one call to Russia, et cetera, et cetera. So Shifty Schiff, Adam Schiff, a real sleazebag, he's at an intelligence meeting, and he's not supposed to be talking, but wherever he goes, the press is out there standing because he's provocative or whatever the hell, or because they figure they'll get something bad on me, which is probably much more accurate. So Schiff comes out. Now think of this, how bad a person you have to be. I have a son, and I love my son. I love all my children. You love your children. I mean, there are a couple of people that, who doesn't love their children? There'll be about 20 people out there. But I have a son, and I love my son. And he's a good boy. He's a good guy. You know Eric, you know Barron. I love my kids. I have good kids. But I love my son. And Schiff goes out. Now think of this. It was him and Crooked Hillary and some other people. They conceived of this hoax. So they know it's a hoax. They know it's not real because it's a made-up story that they conceived, and, you know, they spied on my campaign, all this stuff. But they conceived of the story, so he knows the story is false. And yet he leaves an intelligence meeting, goes to the press, which is waiting outside, a lot of press, and he says something to the effect, Donald Trump Jr., the son of the President of the United States, will be going to jail. He will spend many years in prison for what he's done to our nation. And think of how bad you have to be. He just said that an innocent kid is going to go to prison on a story that's a bacocked story. It's a made-up story. And he said, my son, the president's son, is going to spend many years in prison. I called my son. I said, hey, Don, how's everything? Are you okay with this? He said, Dad, I don't know what they're talking about. He meant it. He said, I don't know what they're talking about. I didn't want to get into it too much because I didn't want to make him nervous. And I said, well, you don't know anything about Russia, do you? He said, Dad, I don't know anything. I have nothing. I don't know what they're talking about. So think of this. It turned out the Mueller report, and I tell you, it was an amazing thing that happened because I had 18 radical left lunatics, and I had Mueller who didn't know where the hell he was, okay? You saw that in the hearings. But think of this. I had no chance. It was a stacked court, but I had an angel in that court. I had somebody that wouldn't allow them to do what some of the sleazebags that you know, and you know who they are. Somebody on that court, and I think I know the person, high-quality person, and would not allow them to do what they would have loved to have done, is convict, even though you're totally innocent, you didn't even know what the hell. So we were exonerated fully. There was no hoax. There was no anything. We were exonerated fully. But just think of it. Just think. And the Mueller report came out, and it was a complete exoneration. But here's a guy that made up a story that tried to put my son in prison for years. And he knew the story was false. They made it up. how bad a person do you have to be? And I heard the son of the President of the United States is going to jail, and he'll be there for many years on a story. Now, how would you feel if you're the kid? I mean, you're a young kid and you're hearing this crap. Just think of it. But how bad do you have to be? So you know it's fake because he made it up. And you know, he's a storyteller too. You know, he writes little bullshit stories. You know that, right? But I just think they're really, we have some, and you know, I talk about the enemy from within, and they do have, they're the greatest con people in the world. Oh, they talk about how dare, that's a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy. You know, the amazing thing is where they say, he wants to become elected and he wants to put people in jail. How terrible. That's what they've been trying to do to me for 4 years.
And I should say that your son, Don, had 5 small children. Can you imagine threatening a man with 5 kids with prison for a crime he didn't commit? So you said that you were saved in the end by an angel. How have your views about God changed in the last 8 years, and particularly after getting shot?
Well, look, I've always been a believer, but I wouldn't say, you know, there's a certain pastor, Robert Jeffress, and I didn't know, his name is Robert Jeffress, nice guy from Texas. And he said, you know, Trump may not be the best Christian of all, but he's the only one going to take us to the promised land because he's the best leader and he's the toughest guy and he's going to be able to get us through this crazy life. And he was a big supporter. And now I have unbelievable evangelical and Christian support because I've done a great job for them and we're together. But he said he may not know the Bible quite as well as other people are supposed to. But, you know, he also did something. They picked Ronald Reagan over Jimmy Carter a long time ago. You know that they said he wasn't quite as religious, but he's the guy that's going to get the job done. And I did a great job with a lot of things having to do with saving religion because these people want to put religion out of business. These people are, you know, they go crazy when I say the enemy from within. And I said, look, we have China, we have Russia, we have Kim Jong-un of North Korea. We have a lot of people out there. But if you have a smart president, I had a great relationship with President Xi until the China virus came in. And that was a bridge too far, but we'll have a very good relationship. And there's reasons for them to want to like us. There's big reasons. But if you have a smart president that kind of smart, meaning with people, if you have a smart president, somebody that knows what's happening, you're going to be fine. But, you know, we do have an enemy from within. We have some very bad people. And those people are also very dangerous. They would like to take down our country. They'd like to have our country be a nice communist country or a fascist in any way they can. And we have to be careful of that. But they're the greatest con artists in the world because as soon as I said an enemy from within, they said, he's saying an enemy from within. These are sick puppies, I'm telling you.
Well, I mean, I gotta say, just objectively, I noticed that the second you left and Biden came in, we didn't have any more Antifa riots, which makes me wonder how is Antifa not the militia of the Democratic Party?
Yeah, but you did have a lot of riots, and you have a lot of people being hurt in a different way. You have a lot of people being hurt very, very badly. We stopped. You know, we had a period of time where they wanted to tear down statues. Yeah. And, you know, they thought the statue of Abraham Lincoln should be ripped down immediately and a couple of others. And we stopped them. I signed an old bill that was old and dusty. It was like of 1910, the United Statues Act of like 1910. It said that if you tear down a statue or even get near it, if you don't want it, if up to the president, you go to jail for 10 years. And when they started getting a little bit frisky, I took that old dusty statue, hadn't been used in a long time. We took it out, and they were getting a little wild. Do you remember that period of time? And I said, I had a little news conference, and I said, anybody that touches a statue, they were going to rip down Andrew Johnson. They were going to rip down Andrew Jackson. And the rope was already on them. And I mean, I saw what was going on. And I signed that thing, and I had a news conference. I said, anybody that touches a statue, if you touch the statue, you go into jail for 10 years with no parole, no early getting out. And I looked, because there was a little discord in Washington. I looked at those people from the back, and I saw those people. I saw about 1,000 asses. They were facing me as they headed out of town. They were heading out of town. And we never heard from them again until recently, when you had, about 2 months ago, you had some horrible riots in Washington, D.C., where they took spray paint and they sprayed the limestone lions and they burned the American flags badly. And, you know, I'd like to see anybody that burns the American flag 1 year in jail. I really believe that.
You mentioned the enemy within. It's pretty clear, well, it's not clear, it's a fact that the CIA and the FBI, which are absolutely not allowed by law to have any influence in American politics, because that's the end of democracy, both of them and a bunch of other intel agencies worked against you on behalf of the Democratic Party from the minute you got elected in 2016. And they're still doing it. They're working against you now. What will you do about that?
So one thing I've learned in Washington, it's all people. You got to get the right people. So when I got elected, I was only, according to the fake news, which I think in this case it wasn't fake, they said I was here 17 times during the course of my life and I never stayed over. So I wasn't a Washington person. I was a New York person. I knew New York, but I didn't know Washington. And all of a sudden, I'm the president of the United States. I'm saying, and I didn't know anybody. I said, hello, anybody? Does anybody would like to have dinner or something? But so I had to rely on rhinos and good people, too. Even some good rhinos. There aren't too many of them. They're sort of a dying breed right now, I would say, actually. But I had to rely on people that I didn't know to give me information. And I won't use any specifics, but I had some people in government with me, and I realized, and you know, they have pretty much different philosophies than I would have or than you would have. And for the most part, we had great people. I mean, we had great trade people. I had great military people. I had the real military, not the millies who's a, you know, they're stupid people, some of these people. By the way, every one of those people having to do with Afghanistan should be fired immediately. Every general should be fired immediately. You know, Biden doesn't fire anybody. That's why he never has books written about, well, two reasons. Number one, nobody cares about him. It's not like, oh, let's write a book about Biden. Nobody cares. But the other thing is that he never, I don't think, has he fired anybody? I don't think he's fired. I fired a lot of people. I didn't like people. I fired them. And then he immediately get called by the New York Times or somebody because they're very, I mean, they truly are the enemy of the people. They're the enemy of the people. Those people right there, not all of them, but about 91%, they're the enemy of the people. So they'll say, oh, he got fired, therefore he... And the interesting thing about firing people, you can fire them really nice, like even I've taken months nice and easy, have lunch, let's think about it, In the end, they get fired, and then they wake up the next morning, that son of a bitch fired me, right? Or you can do like I did on The Apprentice, you're fired, get the hell out of here. Doesn't matter. When you fire somebody, you fire somebody. I've learned after years, you might as well just fire them. Then I do another thing. I say, and I wouldn't do that again, because I'm a nice person. I don't want to hurt somebody. I say, give me a letter. You know what that means? Give me a letter. I said, look, it's not working out. You're not the guy for me. Give me a letter of resignations. I say, give me a letter. Everyone knows what that means. So a guy will write a letter, dear, and then he'll say he quit. And that's okay. That's what I'm, you know, the problem is when that happens with me, it's always a big story, so-and-so quits. Virtually every person that gave me a letter, I said, give me a letter. Virtually every person that quit, they only quit because I said, essentially, you're fired, get the hell out of here. But I want to be nice because I'm not looking to fire somebody publicly. I wouldn't do that anymore. I'm just going to say, if somebody doesn't work out, and no matter how good you are, you always have people that don't work out. It's interesting. Sometimes people, you think they're okay, maybe not so great, they turn out to be great. And sometimes you say, this guy is going to be phenomenal, and he turns out to be a stiff. But I had some people that were, you know, like a guy like John Bolton. A friend of mine calls me after I put him on. He said, don't hire that guy. He's no good. He's bad news. He's dumb as a rock and all that stuff. I said, it's a problem, but I like him for a different reason. He's the one that got Bush, him and Cheney and a couple of other of these lunatics. They got them to go into the Middle East and to create war in the Middle East, to spend $9 trillion. Remember, I used to say, don't go into Iraq, but if you do go in, keep the oil. Well, they went in, but they didn't keep the oil. They didn't keep anything. You know, Iraq is a massive oil country. They have $400 billion right now. But I said, don't go in. But I said it as a civilian, so people cared because for whatever reason, I get a disproportionate amount of publicity. And someday he's going to explain to me why. Will you explain that to me? So even as a civilian, sort of, before I ran, but I'd be very much, you know, involved with things and statements. They'd call and ask. But I said, don't go in. They went in. It was such a bad decision. So Bolton, see again, you get back, Bolton, a real dope. But I thought he'd be great because he was so stupid. He was like a boiler. Every time, if somebody shot down a little tiny crappy drone that cost about $15, he'd want to go to war with Russia. I said, no, I think he was great for me, though, for a period of time because he was a nut job, and everybody, I could see his face get red with that stupid white mustache, and he'd be ready to explode. And this was good for me. I went to Kim Jong-un in North Korea. I took this moron with me, and he never said anything. But when Kim Jong-un saw him, he said, oh, shit, I think the guy wants to go to war. So he was great for me to negotiate with. The same thing with Russia. You know, when Putin saw him, I'd be very nice. I'd say, hi, Vladimir, how you doing? And then Putin's, you know, 2 rows back, and he'd see that moron, and he'd say, holy shit, this guy wants to go to war with me. And I got a lot of what I wanted. You know, we killed, as you know, the Nord Stream 2. I killed Nord Stream 2. That's the other thing that's great. Their PR sense, their political sense, very interesting. They love to say that I was a friend of Russia, I worked for Russia, I was a Russian spy. These people are sick. The biggest job Russia ever had is Nord Stream 2. This is the biggest pipeline like in the world. Goes from Russia to Germany and all over Europe. I killed it. Nobody would kill it but me. I stopped it. The thing was half built, dead. Then there's obviously, look, in all fairness to Biden, he was dumb 35 years ago. He was a dumb guy. It's true. It's true. But he comes in and he approves it, but he stops the Keystone pipeline, which really we need. That's our pipeline. But think of it.
Wrong country.
Yeah, but think of it. It's rough. It's rough stuff. He stopped. I said, wait a minute, it's supposed to be the other way. Let Keystone go, but stop the Russian pipeline. And I went to the Germany and the different countries, but mostly Germany, and say, so let's get this straight. We're helping you and guarding you from Russia, but you're paying Russia billions of dollars a month for oil. How's that working? That's not working, dude. I mean, the whole concept. Anyway, I stopped it. And then I keep reading stories that, oh, I was a puppet for Russia. Putin actually said to me, if you're a puppet now, I'd hate to see if you were angry, because this was the biggest economic job. This was the most important thing that they probably had ever done, and I stopped it. It's all about the people, Tucker. If you have the right people, it goes beautifully. It's like in my real estate business. If I have a good building here and I have a good superintendent of the building, and that guy's doing a great job, and I've done it over the years with my father, would have a building and another building, and you'd have a great super here and a lousy super there. The one here, the building, everything was perfect. Over here, everything was crappy. That we have the. So now I'd say, let's take this super, move them over here. It worked beautifully for there, but not for there, because now all of a sudden that one doesn't. It's all about the people. You got to put the people in. And if I have any complaint about myself, and I don't really blame myself, because in all fairness, I became president of the United States, and I never did this stuff before, you know? It's pretty good. I never did it before. I was driving down Pennsylvania Avenue with Melania, the new First Lady, who's great. People love her. She's got the #1 selling book. Tucker, she's got the number. Melania right now has the #1 selling. Go out and buy it. It's a great book. It really is. But think. So I had never done it before, and I do it. We had 18 people, including me. We had debates, and all of a sudden, we had 17, 16, 15, and they started disappearing. And a lot of people thought I was doing it just for fun. You did. I think Tucker did, too. He thought I was having a good time. I was actually having a good time. But all of a sudden, did you notice they started to disappear? Then you have 10 people. And then, you know, you had low-energy people. You had a lot of interesting people. And then I came up with nicknames for everybody. And for the most part, they were extremely destructive, right? We had some beauties. We had some, like Pocahontas because I don't use my Republican names anymore because I'm friendly with all those guys. We retired those names. But all of a sudden, they start. And then we get down to 10. So now 8 are gone. And we're down to 10. Remember, we needed 2 stages because there were so many. I said, we have the children's stage, and then we have the grown-up stage. And it was all based on the numbers, the ratings, the numbers, your popularity, how you're doing. So then we're 10, then we're 8, then we're 5, then we're 4, 3, 2, 1, right? And all of a sudden, I'm the nominee. And everyone thought I didn't want to be up, but I did want to be. Don't let them tell you that. They said, he didn't, all these geniuses, they said, he didn't really want to win. He's extremely upset that he would. No. If you're going to play, you know, win, and some people were surprised. But you heard that I didn't want to win, and I was miserable that I won. No, that's a false story. That's their own misinformation, a term I use a lot, and now they use it all over. I always say misinformation, disinformation, and now everybody says that, so I don't use it anymore. But what happens is I end up being the nominee. And then I watch the other side, Bernie Sanders and Crooked Hillary go at it. And it's Crooked Hillary. And all of a sudden, I'm fighting against Crooked Hillary Clinton, who's a smart woman, much smarter than Kamala, but doesn't lie as much. Hillary was a liar, a horrible scoundrel. But this one lies so much. And she's a low IQ individual. She doesn't even know she's lying, I'm telling you. This is not what you want for your president. That has nothing to do with me. This is not what you want. She's a very low IQ individual. She's dumb as a rock, and you can't have that. You can't have that. We love our country too much. You can't have it. We just went through 4 years of it. You can't have any more. A country can only take so much. And then I won, and so the point is that I never did it before, right? I'm president of the United States, and I was never even a politician before. And I picked some great people, Lighthizer and Trade, and we had a lot of great people. But
what's interesting is
it's all about the people. You got to have the right people.
When you ran in 2016, the leaders and heroes of the Republican Party were the Bush and Cheney families. And is it weird for you to see Liz Cheney, that'd be Dick Cheney's repulsive little daughter, running against you with Kamala Harris?
Well, I think it hurts Kamala a lot, actually. Look, she's a deranged person. The reason she doesn't like me is that she wanted to stay in Iraq. She wants to, you know, tough person. You know, people get killed all over. She's real tough, right? They're not the tough people. Don't forget, I went against her, and in her state, which is a great, beautiful state, she lost for Congress with the highest number in history. There has never been a congressperson that lost by almost 40 points. And the reason is because if they were ever in that situation, they'd quit. And she lost. She was beaten by a tremendous person, actually, tremendous, that I backed fully. But the reason she couldn't stand me is that she always wanted to go to war with people. I don't want to go to war. She wanted to stay in Syria. I took them out. She wanted to stay in Iraq. I took him out. I mean, if it were up to her, we'd be in 50 different countries. And you know, number one, it's very dangerous. Number two, a lot of people get killed. And number three, I mean, it's very, very expensive. That's why we owe $36 trillion. We go, you know, it used to be you go to war, to the victor belong the spoils, right? In other words, if you beat a country, you own that country, you take the oil, we go to war, we bomb the crap out of it, and then we leave. You know, it's almost like, what are we doing? What's going on? We bombed the whole Middle East, and then we left. What did we get? We got nothing. We destroyed. I mean, we bombed the hell out of everything. You know, when they took out Iraq for 1,000 years with different names, you had Iran and Iraq, similar powers. They were the two big ones. And for 1,000 years, they would fight each other this way, this way, this way, then they'd rest. This way, then they'd rest. They were a self-check. Then one day we go in and bomb the hell out of one, we destroy one, and then all of a sudden Iran has the whole Middle East to itself. And by the way, right now Iran has Iraq. Iraq is like a subsidiary of Iran, all right? We did so many bad moves, and her father was it. You know, her father was, I was very critical of her father for years. I'd never met him, but I'd say anybody that went into the Middle East I thought was stupid. And they say, convinced Bush. Bush, oh, he was another beauty. But he supposedly convinced Bush to go in, him, Bolton, and some other lightweights, convinced them to go in. Let's go into the Middle East and destroy the whole place and kill millions of people. So they went in. But I was never a fan of Cheney. I was always very critical. And when I announced that, I was very critical, actually, not personally, but I said, he made a horrible mistake. What are these people doing? We spent 9 trillion with a T, not even with a B. Normally I say not million, billion, but now I say not billion, trillion. We spent $9 trillion bombing the hell out of the Middle East. And what the hell did we get other than lots of dead people, all over, including our people? We got nothing. So I was very critical of him. And then I announced I was running, and I was shocked that he was one of the first people. He endorsed me immediately. I said, that's amazing. But he had something that was very interesting. He had Scooter Libby. I mean, these are little stories that are interesting. Scooter Libby was a man that could have done great destruction to Bush, and they left him behind. He was given to the prosecutors. They prosecuted him rather violently, and he was almost like a sacrificial lamb. And as somebody that knows a lot about what's happening, I said, you know, if I were ever president, I'd do something with that guy. That guy got treated very badly, Scooter Libby. And when I became president, I actually called Dick Cheney. I said, let me ask you about Scooter Libby. He was best friends. He was begging Bush to give Scooter Libby a pardon, but Bush didn't have the courage to do it. You know, it takes courage to give a pardon. It does take a certain courage because the press comes after you, know, et cetera, et cetera. And he didn't have the courage to give him. He should have given him a pardon, but he didn't have the guts to do it. But Scooter, and what happened is Dick Cheney, for years, for a long time, hated Bush. And don't let anyone tell you, he hated. He said, you don't leave your wounded behind. And I understand that. And Scooter Libby really saved Bush, because he could have said things that would have been very dangerous for Bush in terms of getting impeached, in terms of going to jail, in terms of bad things happening. But Scooter Libby didn't do that. And in all fairness to Cheney, I give him credit for this. He was very loyal to him, but he couldn't get Bush to do what he should have done. I came into government, and I did what they should have done. They didn't have the guts to do it. I did it. And Scooter Libby was pardoned. I gave him a pardon. And I never met Scooter Libby, by the way. Never talked to him before that. And I got a call from Scooter Libby after I did that. And he broke down in tears, thanking me so much. And then Cheney called me, and he said, that was so incredible what you did for Scooter Libby, because he was really on Scooter Libby's. Scooter Libby took a lot of heat and took all of it and didn't say anything bad about Bush or Cheney or anything else. Could have done it, I know, because you have, you have guys that do that, and you have guys that lie, which is worse, right? But you have guys that do that. But he was very loyal to them, and he suffered greatly. I released him. Cheney called me. He said, it's one of the nicest things I've ever seen done in politics. I said, look, I've heard for years he was treated unfairly. I've heard for years that Bush should have given him a pardon. All I did is do something that somebody else should have done. And Cheney was so, he said, I really want to thank you. He said, now I'm so glad that I actually endorsed you. It's amazing, but that you would do this. And I didn't speak to him about it. But then, go a couple of years forward or go now, and I don't blame him for sticking with his daughter, but his daughter is a very dumb individual, very dumb. She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. When the guns are trained on her face. They're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy. But she's a stupid person. And I used to I'd have meetings with a lot of people, and she always wanted to go to war with people. So whether it's her, whether it's Dick, I was surprised a little bit with Dick Cheney. I didn't know him at all. I only had essentially the 1 or 2 phone calls, and it was only a call saying, thank you very much for doing that for Scooter Libby. That was nice. And Scooter Libby, by the way, was beyond, he couldn't believe that it happened. Nobody would do it. They should have done that for him years before. But I was a little surprised because I actually thought that Dick Cheney would go with me over his daughter, and he didn't. And you know what? I understand it. It's your daughter, and you go. But she's a bad person. One other thing, they had the J6 committee, and I say this for the fake news back there. They learned a lot of phony things, like that I took on, when I was in the car, take me to the Capitol, I said, according to this young lady. And then they said, sure, we won't do that. Well, number one, if I said it, they do it. But I had 2 people, Secret Service guys, both extremely rough guys. One was like a karate champion, one was a weightlifter. She said, I grabbed the one by the neck, and when I was rebuffed, I went over to the other one, and I grabbed him in a chokehold or something. And actually, no, but how ridiculous, okay? Just not my thing. You would know. Hey, we can be tough, but it's not my thing. I wouldn't do it. I said, actually, can we go down to the Capitol? They said, sir, it's better if we don't. This was before anyone knew there was a problem, because there's a lot of people and it's going to be tough. Probably not. And we had more people than I've ever seen up at the ellipse up on top. And a small group went down to the Capitol. But I said, can you take? They said, sir, it's really a little bit tough. I said, that's okay. Whatever you think is, she had me grabbing the one around the neck and being rebuffed. And then I grabbed the other one. And I know them both very well. Bobby. I know Bobby wins, Bobby. And they're good. And they're good guys, too, but they're tough guys. I think they probably could have rebuffed me. I'm a little bit older. But friends of mine love the story. They said, leave the story. You sound like the toughest dude around. It's a great story. But it was totally made up. It was all made up. But here's the end result. The J6 committee, they call it the J6 Select Committee, like select. They're not select, they're scum. So what happens, take a look at them. They're all political hacks. But here's the thing that bothers me. They found out all this stuff was untrue. They found out her story was untrue. The 2 guys in the car testified. It's ridiculous, they said. It is ridiculous. Can you imagine? They also, I think, said it was the Beast, and it wasn't. It was one of the other ones, but you can't even get your hands through. But to think that I would be taking on 2 nice young guys simultaneously. All right, same. I'm ripping one and ripping the other. They're crazy. And then I went, back to the White House, which I love, and I started throwing hamburgers all over the place. Okay. Finish the story is this. What happened is terrible. They went a year and a half, and Kevin McCarthy, who's a very nice man, he made a mistake because we wanted Jim Banks and Jim Jordan on the committee, and so there'd be like 8 to 7 or something. And called me on this. He said they didn't want Jim Jordan. He's a fighter. They didn't want Jim Banks. He's a fighter. And so Kevin said, we don't want anybody on the committee. We think this committee's a sham. And I understood that was good for a day, but for the 2.5 years, we had nobody to fight for us. In other words, we had a committee. You know who was representing us on the committee? Crying Adam Kinzinger and Liz, the moron Cheney. That was who was on the committee. So these were the two Republicans. Kinzinger, who was a total whack job, and Cheney, who was worse than him. This was so they talk about it was a bipartisan, they call it a bipartisan commission. And I think I'd never liked the idea of not, because even if you didn't have Jim Jordan, who's very good, and Jim Banks, we have a lot of great people that would have been good, and they would have, they would have mixed it up. End result, like, they finished their report, they burned and destroyed and deleted everything. Everything. And nobody, and you know why? Because they found out that Nancy Pelosi, it was her fault. She didn't put the security. I offered 10,000 National Guard or military. They found out it was Nancy Pelosi. They found out that the stories about me attacking two very tough guys that are slightly younger than me, just a few years, that wasn't true. They found out that much of it wasn't true, and they were very embarrassed. So the Unselect Committee, I call it the Unselect Committee, which I always thought was a great name because it was a select, I call it the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs. What happened is, think of it, end of the story, they deleted and destroyed all evidence, all documents. There's nothing. And the reason they did it is because they were guilty as hell. It's the greatest cover-up, and the fake news back there will not cover it. They've never even, I think, done a story. In other words, when you go into court, we want that information. There is no information. It's been destroyed. Everything's been destroyed. We have a very crooked government. Remember that. And we're going to straighten it out, and we're going to make it an honest government.
So I have to ask you about the pardons. I keep hearing you're considering pardoning Hunter Biden. Is that true? And if so, why?
No, I mean, I've never... look, I don't like the idea of what's happening. I don't like it at all. They've weaponized government, but they've weaponized it against me like nobody's ever been weaponized. The big case was the documents case. We won the case in Florida. We're winning other cases, too. But I've had to devote money and time to this. Instead of running against these stupid people, I had to devote a lot of money and a lot of time, which is what they want. I had Fani, F-A-N-I. To me, it's Fanny, but she said Fani. I think she changed it once she became the DA. She wanted to put a little French accent on Fani. And her lover boy, Wade, who was hired for like $1 million because of his expertise in whatever the hell law, RICO, but he never did a RICO case. And then they would take sailing trips like 6 times during the year, 6 times. Who the hell goes away on a sail for 6 times? Nobody. And he got paid a lot of money. He took that money, they took trips. There's a whole thing, but that's just one. They totally controlled it. They control the Manhattan DA's office. They had their man in the Manhattan DA's office. He was there. They put a man in the Manhattan. They put a man into the Letitia James office. They had a guy running the whole thing. It's all run out of Washington. They went after, in the Attorney General's office, they had people, but think of it, they went after their political opponent. That's never happened to any great extent. Maybe a little bit someplace, I don't know, nobody knows of it, but it's never happened to any great extent in this country. It happens in banana republics a lot, and it happens in third world countries, but it's never happened. They went after their political opponent. So it's hard to believe that I'm winning, it seems, by a lot. If they don't cheat too much, you know, we found a lot of things over the last 3 days. You've seen that. We found a lot of votes, and in a certain county, in York County, Lancaster County, you know, we found a lot of bad votes. There were 2,600 votes that happened to be written by the same pen, same hand, same signature, same everything. Maybe there's an explanation for that. 2,600 votes. But we found a lot of stuff, but we're seeing to work it out. But think of it, it's hard to believe that I'm winning the election by a lot. Now, we got to keep the cheating down. We got to keep their cheating. I love you too, darling. Thank you. We got to keep their cheating down. But think of this. With all I've been through, with these animals coming and what they've done to this country, how they've hurt this country between the borders and between the weaponization, and think of it, I'm leading by a lot. I'm leading in every single swing state with all of the stuff they've done, where I've spent millions of dollars. I've spent millions of dollars on legal fees. Half of my time is taken up by this. They can campaign. Half of my time is taken up. And they're the dishonest ones. They flip it. They're the dishonest ones. But it's hard to believe. I said to somebody last night, can you believe the numbers came out last night? I'm really leading by quite a bit. Now, a lot of things can happen. Who knows? It flips, maybe. I don't know. But I'm leading by a lot. I said, can you believe I'm leading by a lot, and what they've done to me, that I'm leading at all, that I'm even living, is almost hard to believe. These are bad people.
So you've expanded and changed the Republican Party, and one of the amazing things that I have learned is that Republican voters really care about issues I didn't realize they cared about, like clean air, clean soil, clean food. You've won, somehow, the full-throated endorsement of Bobby Kennedy, lifelong Democrat, who's now like a full-time surrogate for you.
He's a very, very good man, too, by the way.
So what's that going to look like after you get elected?
Well, you know, I feel interesting about this kind of stuff. I like to, number one, get elected. I hate to talk to stuff. A lot of people, they set up, I know that even when I ran, Hillary had an office set up where they were interviewing all the, I don't want to do that. I want to get elected first, and then we'll cram a little bit. But, you know, I don't like doing it. No, I remember she set up this big office. They're interviewing people for jobs. And actually, you're supposed to do it. But I want to win. I want to win in 5 days from now. It's almost 4 days from now, right? In 5 days from now, when we have a victory, we're going to have the best people. Here's the one difference, one big difference between now and 2016. I know Washington and the people through testing, real testing, better than probably any human being that's ever hired people. So I went from not knowing anybody and having to rely on, in all fairness, Mike Pence and many other people. I had Mike Pence, and I had others, and they would recommend people. Sloppy Chris Christie recommended some people. And I wouldn't have used him had I known. But you rely on people. And by the way, you know, I hate talking about this because we had mostly great people. Think of it. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We rebuilt the entire U.S. military. We defeated ISIS, and we had no wars. We cut more regulations than anybody in the history of the country ×5. And, you know, but we had the best economy in the history of our country. I took in billions and billions of dollars in taxes and tariffs from China. I mean, we had an unbelievably successful administration. We were energy independent. We didn't need anybody's energy. We had so much oil, we didn't know what to do with it. And now take a look. 4 years ago, we were energy independent. Think of it. And today we're taking tar from Venezuela. You know, they don't really have oil, they have tar. You have to heat the hell out of it. It costs you more to heat it than it does to sell it. But we are going to Venezuela. Think of it. Venezuela was like the enemy. We are now giving, you know, I got a kick a month ago, you saw it. They foreclosed on his plane, but they give him billions of dollars. I said, that's okay. He's going to buy a much better plane with the money we give him, right? But we go to Venezuela for oil. We were energy independent. We have more liquid gold, that's oil and gas, under our feet than Saudi Arabia, than Russia. And we were going to be not only energy independent, within 6 months, we were going to be energy dominant. We started off at number 4. And when I left, 4 years later, we were number 1. We were much better and bigger than Russia or Saudi Arabia. Think of that. But we were going to be triple the size of both. And we were going to supply it to Europe. We were going to supply it to Asia. All over the world, we were going to supply. We would have made a fortune. But then we had a little mishap with the election where I got more votes than any sitting president in the history of our country. You do know that. More than any sitting president. The only one that supposedly got more votes, and I wouldn't believe it, was Sleepy Joe Biden, who campaigned brilliantly from his basement. People had no interest in this guy, but he got more votes than anybody in the history of the United States of America. So anyway, so bad things happened, but we had something going that nobody had. I mean, we had an unbelievably successful administration, but I also put in some people that, in retrospect, I wouldn't have used. But I had to rely on other people for recommendations. Now, I know everybody. I know the dumb ones, the smart ones, the weak ones, the strong ones. I think I know everybody, and you know, I've got people that I think will be great. With that being said, you pick people, and sometimes they disappoint you. Everybody knows that. And then you pick people, and sometimes they turn out to be better than you thought. But for the most part, I tell you what, I think we have some incredible people in Washington. We really do. We have some great people, and I now know, I believe, for the most part, I know who those people are.
Do you think Bobby Kennedy and Elon Musk will be influential figures, without being specific about what those roles will be, in your administration?
Yeah, I do. I think so. Look, Bobby, let's talk two of them. Elon's so great. You know where he is right now? He's in Pennsylvania campaigning for me. Elon. That rocket ship, right? No, it's so great. He docked that big monster, 22 stories. I thought the sucker was going to be done. You know, it's a very crazy story. I mean, I saw it coming in on television. I was talking to I told the story tonight, but I thought it was a very, you know, I'm talking to this very important guy, not as important as Tucker, but important. A big shot. Somebody everybody would know. Talking to him, I'm bored, stiff. He's a boring guy.
Who is he?
So anyway, no, I'm talking to this very big shot, important guy, and I have the television muted. This thing's going on, you know, the whole thing was really boring. Then I see this monster thing coming down. I see fire all over, fire left, right, and I'm looking, I'm saying, hey, could you hold it a minute? Yeah, sure. I said, yeah, I just want to see something. I put the phone down. I sort of forgot, and I didn't pick him up for like 50 minutes, and 5-0. And you know what? Because of the fact that I was president, and I very well might be president again, he held on the whole time. Can you believe it? But it's true. I picked the phone up. I say, oh, shit, the phone. Hello? Hello? He goes, hello? The poor guy. But I had to see this. and I turn it on. I see the. Now you have to understand, it left. I saw it leave, and it was beautiful white paint. Now it's coming down, and it's just dark brown. It's coming down at 10,000 miles an hour or something. I think it's 10,000. It's coming down at levels of speed that nobody ever even conceived of, and it's all burned and where it's rough. But it's coming, and now it's turned around. It turns around. And you have the gantry, the big, beautiful gantry, and it's coming, and it's gonna, I said, oh, it's gonna crash, because you see at that bottom, this section right here, that sucker's, oh, I'm going, come on, baby, come on. And I didn't know, actually, if I'm watching a science fiction movie or am I watching the news. I didn't know what the hell I'm watching. But I see this thing coming down, and all of a sudden, it's going into the steel, the big steel gantry up here. It goes, the thing's like 20 stories tall, too. It's going to crash. I said, oh, shit, it's going to crash. Coming down. And the lower section, right, it's coming right, it's ready. And then all of a sudden, whoa, fire, flames come pouring out of the lower section. It's jets. And they're pushing it over right here. And then it comes down. And I'm saying, I mean, is that the coolest thing you've ever seen, right? Is that the coolest? If you don't think I want a guy like that working for us, so, we've got to